Hello everybody, my name is Starrapter. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Star Wars Canon. Every week I talk about everything new in the Star Wars universe that connects back into the films. This could be anything such as the TV series, the comics, the novels, and to the video games. And this week, it was probably one of the best weeks to be a Star Wars fan. Star Wars Celebration happened in Orlando over this past weekend, where we get everything new, such as trailers for TV, movies, video games, comics, you name it, we basically got it out of this convention. I talked a bit about the trailers for Battlefront, Rebels, and The Last Jedi, so if you want to check them out, I have breakdowns as well as reactions on this channel. But going into a little bit of Battlefront, we got some big news for a new novel that's coming out. So originally, there was this Inferno Squad novel written by Christie Golden that was going to be released sometime in July. And at the panel of Battlefront 2, which I can't wait for the game, they actually came out and announced with Christie Golden that it was actually titled Battlefront 2 Inferno Squad, so that is going to be the prequel to what we play in the Inferno Squad as Iden Versio. And it seems like a brilliant idea because we already had a great tie-in novel to the original Battlefront, which is Battlefront Twilight Company. That was written by Alexander Frieden. I really love that because that was written from a Rebels perspective. Now we are getting the perspective from the Imperial side, and what we know about the story so far is that it takes place right after Rogue One, and it's about Iden Versio, and she's tasked with this job with these other commandos. They're like an elite specialist squad, and they're going to go in and try to take out the partitions of Saw Gerrera. And I'm not sure how long this novel takes place, but it's going to give us a good idea of what makes up Inferno Squad. And just the idea that we're going to be able to play her in the game. And it's from the Imperial perspective for a game that, like, I don't even know how many games have done that. Not many, at least in Star Wars. And it's the first Star Wars canon story. And in the trailer, like I had mentioned in my breakdown, there's all different sorts of things for you canon junkies out there. We have stuff from Shattered Empire and Aftermath littered throughout that trailer. So I am super pumped for this book. So another thing that was announced this weekend was Forces of Destiny. This is going to be a short formatted animated cartoon series that is going to focus on the female characters of Star Wars throughout all the eras. So we're going to have Ahsoka in there. We're going to have Jyn Erso, Rey, Sabine, and they're all voiced by the actual actresses. So you have Felicity Jones doing Jyn Erso, you have Daisy Ridley doing Rey, you have Tia Sircar doing Sabine. So it's going to be awesome. What really pumped me up about this is that it's actually all canon. And it's really cool because we've already seen things where it's like Sabine's interacting with Princess Leia. Then we have Hera, who is actually on Endor during Return of the Jedi. So that really excites me as, you know, somebody that's into the canon. Seeing that some of these characters are interacting with our legacy characters is really sweet. And they also have these really cool kind of dolls coming out to promote the film, so there's something for the female fans of Star Wars to get excited for. Now, what was announced was also this movement that was similar to Journey to the Force Awakens, but it's called Journey to the Last Jedi. So all this stuff I'm pretty sure is coming out in September. So we had comics and we have novels. First off, I'm going to start with the comic. We have a 4-part, I believe, miniseries focused on Captain Phasma. Yes, that character that everybody was looking so much forward to, and she gets little to no screen time with a couple lines and gets thrown down a garbage chute. Yes, we get an entire comic miniseries based on her, and this one is actually going to pick up right for when she was left off in Starkiller Base in that garbage chute. But that's not all for Phasma. She's getting her own novel, which is going to flesh out her backstory. This one's called Phasma. It's being written by Delia Dawson. Might sound familiar to you because she wrote The Perfect Weapon. It was an ebook that centered around the bounty hunter seen in Force Awakens called Bazine Natal. So you might as well call this like the journey to flesh out Captain Phasma or something, because wow, we are going to get all this backstory on her. Everybody was complaining about, hey, she doesn't do anything to Force Awakens. They listened to everybody's feedback because wow, we are getting a bunch of story about her. That's not everything though, because we are getting a new Leia book. This is a young reader book called Leia, Princess of Alderaan. And who better to write this thing than Claudia Gray, who wrote Bloodline, which is still one of my favorite novels of Star Wars in general, canon, EU. It's a great story. I don't really have many details to share with you guys about this. And the next book I'm going to talk about, I have basically nothing to talk about with this one. So we are also getting a Luke Skywalker book called The Legends of Luke Skywalker. So with it being called The Legends, I'm sure there are a bunch of maybe short stories or something in there. But yeah, we have basically had nothing to do with Luke between between Force Awakens and Return of the Jedi. So I've been ready for a Luke book to come out. This is probably not what I've really been waiting for, but again, I have nothing to share with you guys as far as details. But, as far as the canon is concerned, that's what I got out of Orlando, out of Celebration. But in general, like I said, it was a great time. Like, I was covering so much stuff on this channel. If you guys want to check it out, like I said, I have a bunch of videos dedicated to the trailers for Rebels, Battlefront, and The Last Jedi. I had a great time. I know a bunch of you that subscribe to me, we've been chatting back and forth because it was one hell of a weekend. There was stuff coming out left and right out of Celebration, and I'm going to do my best to actually be there, having my boots on the ground in the 2019 location. They're taking a year off. I'm not sure where they're going to be in 2019. I speculate they might be in California to coincide with the opening of Star Wars parks that's slated to open in 2019. That would be what I would do if I was in charge. But hey, I'm not in charge and I don't know anybody who is. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed for that. So that wasn't all that we had in canon this week. We also had the release of Poe Dameron number 13. This is part 6 of the Gathering Storm arc. And last time we left Poe, he was in a bit of trouble. He was stuck in his cave with the droid he was supposed to retrieve. And the droid's basically useless and doesn't want to fight to protect him because he is being pursued by Agent Terex of the First Order Security Bureau and all of his goons. However, his resistance group, Black Squadron, has flown into orbit and is going to help Poe, but they can't get down to the planet in time to save him. So Snap Wexley actually transmits the personality matrix of his old droid, Mr. Bones, into that droid that is with Poe, turns him basically into Mr. Bones 2.0, and he basically saves Poe's life in a way. But then that's not to stop the showdown between Agent Terex and Poe, and BB-8 comes in and saves the day. However, in space they're battling, so it's basically Black Squadron is fighting off Terex's men, who are called the Ranks, his old gang back in the day, and they're fighting. And next thing you know, the First Order comes in, cleans out house, they destroy all of his men, and they go down to the planet where they actually capture Agent Terex. Finally, this guy gets captured, and that's kind of where the story goes. There's a bit of a standoff between the First Order that go to pick up Agent Terex and Poe Dameron. As we know, they can't be an open war because it's not that point in the story yet. In Force Awakens, that's when it becomes kind of open war with the Starkiller base. But at this point, it's basically a Cold War, which is pretty sweet because it's basically like they won't try to kill Poe because he is still in the New Republic, and if they did happen to kill Poe, they actually had his fighter squadron taking holovids, so they would be able to transmit it to the Senate and be like, okay, we're getting into open war with the First Order because they killed one of our own men. So they were kind of on that standoff, which is pretty sweet. But I'm going to move more into my positives now for this issue. So I really did enjoy that Mr. Bones is back, because I remember back all the way at New York Comic Con, I was at that panel with all the story people, with the writers for all Star Wars, and Charles Soule, the writer of this comic, back then, he was like, oh yeah, Mr. Bones is gonna be in Poe Dameron, and I'm sitting there waiting every month like, where is Mr. Bones? Where is Mr. Bones? And he's here, he's finally here, and that's kind of cool how they can just program with Snap Wexley. He's got the personality matrix, so he can literally turn whatever droid he wants, I guess, into Mr. Bones. So that's really sweet. And I feel like Charles Soule did a great job of, capturing the personality of Mr. Bones, how he just starts yelling and loves violence. He's a little bit mixed with like an HK-47, if you guys are fans with Knights of the Old Republic. Really cool. Something I found interesting in this issue. Okay, so the cover obviously has Captain Phasma's picture on there. And at the end of this issue, when I said that the First Order comes in to kind of arrest Agent Terex, who is getting out of the line, he's recruited these smugglers, he's going against Captain Phasma many times in the past. So there is this officer, tall, blonde hair. Her name, she introduces herself to Poe as Commander Malaris. Alright? So how many First Order officers do you see that are that tall and look exactly like, Gwendolyn Christie but she's saying her name is Commander Mahler. So I can only assume that's Captain Phasma and she's using that name as an alias. Now, why is she using that name as an alias? So she doesn't appear to be, you know, because she's introducing herself to Poe Dameron, so I don't really know, but it's strange. I don't know why. So that was something cool, or at least confusing anyway. But another thing I liked was the Rogue Squadron kind of vibe that I got from this issue. So basically, they have that one ship, the Carrion Spike, which they basically commandeer from the inside out. That one character named Adi, who is like the mechanic for Black Squadron. He kind of hacked the ship, and then he gets away in an escape pod with all the slaves. And basically, Black Squadron kind of has to protect these escape pods, and they're doing like an escort mission. And at the same time, you have the Ranks crew, who is basically a mixed match of all of these different ship parts, like AT-STs and AT-ATs and TIE Interceptors and Snow Speeders, and every ship you could think of. They kind of mismatch them part by part to try to build these ships, which it's really cool because they actually have an entire fleet of these things. So I really thought that was a great art design. And finally, one last thing I want to talk about is that one of the characters gets killed off. I'm not going to spoil who it is, but I just like that they actually can go away with providing risk and danger by killing off certain characters. Obviously, some of these characters have to go in one way or the other, because in Force Awakens, some of these people aren't visible, they're not there, so something's gonna happen to them. But yeah, I really enjoyed this issue of Poe Dameron number 13. Again, we're not getting too much in the backstory of Poe. I think that has something to do with maybe episode 8 fleshing him out, and then we're gonna get more after that, something like that. So that is gonna do it for this week in Star Wars Canon. What did you think of Celebration? What was some of your favorite things that came out of that convention? What did you like about Poe Dameron number 13? What do you think of all the comics out so far? Let's talk about it in that comment section below. Also, make sure you subscribe to me so you don't miss any of my future content. I'm Starrapter. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with you always. So, did you like the video? Then make sure you rate it a thumbs up, and if you did that, go over there, hit that Starrapter head so you subscribe to my channel. Doing so will keep you up to speed on all of my latest content. Speaking of which, you can see a couple of my recent uploads down below. I'm also on social media, so what are you waiting for? Let's start nerding out.